In this video, I'm going to show you everything you need to know about the carnivore diet. I'm going to break down how you might benefit from it, why it works, and how to get started the right way. It could honestly be a complete game changer for you. These are the exact same tips that I give to all my students, and they've all gone to see some amazing results. So you know it works. Before we get started, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell to get notified every time I post a new video every week. Alright, let's dive in. Okay, I've mentioned in some of my recent videos that I've been on a carnivore-ish type of diet since I moved to Mexico. I've been here for 3 months now. And I'm big on biohacking and self-experimentation. I would never recommend anything that I've never personally tried. And I can honestly say that my health and fitness has reached a new level since I made the switch to a carnivore-ish type of diet. This is actually not my first time doing this. I did it as a personal experiment back in 2018 when I was first exposed to it when I went to KetoCon, and I did it for 30 days. I had amazing results back then, especially when it came to my sleep, digestion, energy, my skin, and more importantly, weight loss. I was basically losing a pound a day for the first 10 days, and I'm not a big guy. Also, people with autoimmune disorders and gut issues have had amazing results with this diet. People have also successfully reversed their type 2 diabetes and have achieved amazing weight loss transformations by going carnivore. And I'm going to explain why in a second here. With that in mind, I've always wanted to give the carnivore diet another go. When I moved to Mexico, my Airbnb didn't have a full kitchen. It's also so much cheaper and just more convenient to just buy cooked meat here. I'm also the world's laziest cook, so I immediately thought this is the perfect time to go carnivore again. And because I had amazing results the first time, it was a no-brainer to switch back to it. And this is how I look after 3 months. So let's quickly define what the carnivore diet is. It's an ancestral way of eating where you're only eating animals, preferably nose to tail, as well as animal products, no plants. Yep, you heard that right. But I'm going to show you some variations of it where you can consume some plants based on their level of toxicity and how you personally respond to it. But in its very essence, it's the complete opposite of the vegan diet. If you've been following my channel, you should already know how I feel about the vegan diet. But at first glance, especially if this is your first time hearing about it, I gotta admit, it kind of sounds extreme. Right? That was my first impression. But the more you understand it, the more sense it's gonna make. So if we go back to Paleolithic times, because we evolved as human beings 2.5 million years ago, animals have always been the preferred food of our ancestors. In fact, a lot of anthropologists will tell you that eating animals is what made us humans. So back then, our ancestors inherently knew how nutrient and calorically dense meat, especially fat, was versus plants. If they were able to successfully hunt down a megafauna, for example, the entire village would have food for days, if not weeks. And this is still practiced today. The Inuits in Canada, for example, and a lot of tribes around the world who still live a mostly hunter-gatherer lifestyle are perfect examples of this. But let's use the Inuits because I'm from Canada. Let's just say there's not a whole lot of plants in northern Canada where the Inuits live. So they mostly hunt seal and polar bears. After a successful hunt, they actually prefer the fatty cuts of meat as well as the organs because again, they're nutrient and calorically dense, and they would give the lean cuts of meat to their dogs. Also, little biology lesson for you. The human stomach is actually more acidic than pure carnivores like hyenas and vultures. It's as if our stomachs evolved preferably to process meat. Do you know what's actually extreme? A vegan diet. There has never been a society in the history of humans that's vegan. It's honestly really nothing more than a modern-day human experiment. On the other hand, again, there are still tribes today that eat a mostly carnivore diet. Funny enough, the Inuits, even though they eat a high-fat and high-protein diet, actually have very low rates of heart disease and diabetes. So in case you didn't know, fat is not bad for you. Fat doesn't make you fat. If anything, if you're not eating enough fat, you're probably fat. So why does the carnivore diet work? I'm going to give you 5 compelling reasons. Number 1, it triggers satiety like no other. Here's the truth about losing weight. Weight loss, in its very essence, is not about counting calories. It's about controlling hunger. Listen to that again if you have to. So if you can control hunger by eating the proper diet, weight loss becomes inevitable. The carnivore diet just happens to trigger 2 of our key satiety hormones. Again, it's a high protein and high fat diet. Protein specifically activates peptide YY or PYY, while fat activates cholecystokinin or CCK. Basically, following this diet keeps you full for a really long time. Sometimes I can't even finish my plate because I'm already full. If you've ever been to an all-you-can-eat Brazilian barbecue restaurant, which is a carnivore stream, I personally love it. I'm in heaven there. You literally get to a point where you can't eat any more meat. You get the meat sweats. That type of satiety, by the way, that you feel is not the same as you would experience when you eat a high-carb meal, especially if it's processed carbs. It's really hard to stop once you get going. That's why you can't just have one Dorito chip. right? Processed carbs are designed to short-circuit your brain because they're engineered to be highly palatable. Your brain lights up like a Christmas tree when you get a taste of it. You get going, and next thing you know, you're staring at the bottom of the bag. And because you just jacked up your blood sugar and insulin levels from eating these highly processed carbs, you're also going to experience a subsequent blood sugar and insulin crash. Afterwards, you feel bloated, you're tired, you feel sluggish, and you feel like you need a nap. When you're on the carnivore diet, it's honestly the complete opposite. You have stable energy, you feel alive, you have this huge boost of energy. Feeling bloated after a meal is not normal, by the way. There is absolutely nothing normal about bloating from food. It's actually a sign that you might have some underlying gut issues. Number 2, it's the purest form of the ketogenic diet. Think of the carnivore diet as the keto diet on steroids. You get the same benefits like weight loss, lower triglycerides, increased HDL cholesterol, which is the good kind of cholesterol, improved PCOS symptoms. It's unbelievably effective against metabolic syndrome, and so much more. And because you're eating almost zero carbs, your blood sugar and insulin always stay stable, hence the stable energy. And I've talked about the importance of moderating insulin in a lot of my other videos because it's the hormone that controls our body weight. It's the switch to fat burning and fat storing. When insulin stays low, it allows you to tap into your almost unlimited fat stores and burn it for energy. And yes, protein spikes insulin as well, but again, it also activates your satiety hormone, so you're kind of protected there. And again, because of this high level of satiety that you get, it allows you to go longer in between meals. You don't need to graze on food all day, which then gives your body more time to burn fat for energy. Number 3, nutrient density. When you go carnivore, you're basically only eating some of the most, if not the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. There are certain essential nutrients, meaning the body can't make it or can't make it in sufficient quantity, that can only be found in animal foods such as retinol, vitamin K2, vitamin D3, vitamin B12, DHA, heme iron, creatine, just to name a few. Needless to say, optimal health is impossible without animal foods. Now imagine if you only eat these nutrient-dense animal foods. This, by the way, is why you can't claim that a vegan diet is the healthy diet for humans. It's just not. I honestly can't remember the expert who said this, but grass-fed and grass-finished beef liver is actually the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. It's the superfood of all superfoods. Just look at these numbers. Truth be told, I used to find the taste of liver absolutely revolting. It's a bit of an acquired taste, but those numbers are just way too hard to ignore. So what I used to do is I would eat a piece of pork rind with every liver bite, and now I actually like it. Here's a nice little chart comparing blueberries and kale to beef and liver. As you can see, they're not even close. You know what real superfoods are? Steak, salmon roe, egg yolks, tallow, and again, the king of all of them, beef liver. The nutrients in animals are also preformed, which means they're also more bioavailable. A perfect example of this is the bioavailability of protein found in animals versus plants. It's honestly night and day. It's as if our digestive system is telling us that it prefers meat. Number 4, it's the ultimate elimination diet. I kind of brushed on this earlier, but there's absolutely nothing normal about feeling bloated after a meal. That means whatever you're eating is causing inflammation and other weird things in your gut. Funny enough, the carnivore diet has been shown to reverse a lot of autoimmune disorders and gut issues because it's the ultimate elimination diet. You're basically eliminating all the foods that trigger inflammation. Here's the ugly truth about plants. Anti-nutrients found in plants trigger inflammation. The most mainstream anti-nutrient is gluten, but that's actually just the tip of the iceberg. The other big players are lectins, phytates, and oxalates. What are anti-nutrients, you ask? Anti-nutrients are chemicals found in plants that keep your body from absorbing essential nutrients from food. It's a protective mechanism they've developed to defend themselves from predators. They're not just sitting on the ground waiting to be eaten. So, through years of evolution, plants have become great alchemists. And one of the ways they've learned to defend themselves is by developing anti-nutrients. So no, kale is not your friend. Eating a steady source of anti-nutrients can lead to inflammation and gut issues, among other things. Fiber is actually one of the big things you're eliminating in this diet. Yes, you heard that right. According to Dr. Paul Saladino, he's one of the big names in the carnivore diet space. He also looks like that. He mentioned in his book, The Carnivore Code, a study where they took a group of people with idiopathic constipation and they divided them into 3 groups. They had a normal fiber, reduced fiber, and no fiber group. Guess what? The zero fiber group completely resolved their gut issues. And when you go carnivore, you completely cut out fiber. This was mind-blowing stuff when I found out about this, but fiber at most is neutral for some, but it could actually be more harmful for others. You won't have a hard time finding a short list of people that say that their gut issues went away when they went carnivore. And it makes sense. The less inflammation you have, by eliminating all the foods that causes inflammation, the less autoimmune symptoms you'll develop. And if you're wondering, yes, I have regular bowel movement and I've been on this diet for 3 months now. Number 5, it's easy to follow. I always like to say that adherence is everything when it comes to your success with whatever diet you're following. And nothing could be simpler than just having one rule. Only eat animals and animal products. Don't eat plants, or at the very least, only eat the least toxic kind. And we'll dive into that in a second. Now, let's quickly talk about optimal carnivore diet numbers. When you switch to the carnivore diet, you honestly don't need to worry too much about things like macro ratio. The only thing that you need to worry about is protein. Your goal is to eat 0.8 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. And because fat is more calorically dense, it usually works out to be a 2-to-1 fat to protein ratio. But don't be married to that. If you're eating burger patties or fatty cuts of steak and not going out of your way to eating lean cuts of meat, your macro ratio will usually take care of itself. Now, let's talk about different levels of the carnivore diet. Let's call the first one a strict carnivore diet, where you're just eating animals, but no animal products like dairy. If you have serious autoimmune issues, you should probably start with this version and then slowly introduce animal products back in. Next is the standard carnivore diet, which I described at the beginning of this video, where you're eating animals and animal products like dairy if you're not lactose intolerant. The last one that I personally follow is the carnivore-ish version of it. Again, all the credit goes to Dr. Paul Saladino for that term. He's honestly one of the biggest reasons why I've transitioned to this diet. I'm a big fan of his work. I personally think that this is the sweet spot and where most people are gonna find themselves. You make animal foods a big portion of your diet and only eat plants that are the least toxic. On the more toxic side are seeds, because those are literally the plant babies. Think about it. You literally can't digest them when you eat them, and they're filled with anti-nutrients. Seeds also include grains, nuts, and legumes. There's a reason why you get really gassy when you eat beans. You should also avoid sweet fruit, as well as any plants from the nightshade family. While moderate toxic plants are things like tubers and berries, while the least toxic ones are non-sweet fruits like avocado. Again, credit to Dr. Paul Saladino for that information. Now, how do you properly start a carnivore diet? Before we get into the actual steps, let me just give you the prerequisite. I highly recommend that you become fat adapted first before you switch to the carnivore diet. This is key if you want to have a mostly seamless transition. If you're currently following the standard American diet, or SAD for short, which is in its very essence a very high carb diet, oftentimes people on SAD eat a mind-blowing 300 grams or more of highly processed insulinogenic carbs daily. If you go from that to a zero carb diet, which is what the carnivore diet is, it's gonna come as a complete shock to your system. You're gonna have massive sugar cravings, you're gonna have headaches, you're gonna be hangry, you're gonna feel lethargic, which are all symptoms of the keto flu. You experience those things when you go from SAD to a ketogenic diet. Those symptoms could be even more magnified if you go from SAD to carnivore. You're not a light switch, you're more like a radio knob. There are levels to this. I recommend switching to a low carb / ketogenic diet first for 3 weeks. That's usually the average time to get fat adapted. I would even give it a full month to give yourself some wiggle room before switching to a carnivore diet. You're gonna have a much smoother transition that way. You can also expedite this process a little bit faster by doing fasted workouts to drain your glycogen stores a lot faster and violently recalibrate your hormones back to its original healthy setting. Next, you need to commit. Don't just try it for a week and say it didn't work for you. Again, you need to let your body go through that adaptation process, and then you can make an honest assessment afterwards. Give it at least 30 days and go from there. And yes, this is another 30 days on top if you're transitioning from the standard American diet. But if you're already following a ketogenic diet, then it's just the 30 days. Now, depending on where you're at with this, it's gonna be different for everyone. Think of it as a broad spectrum. If you're trying to heal an autoimmune disease, then I would recommend going with a strict carnivore diet for a week or two. Then afterwards, maybe switch to a standard carnivore diet where you start introducing eggs and even some dairy. Just add them slowly so you can pinpoint food intolerances. I can almost guarantee that you're gonna be unrecognizable in a good way if you see this through for 30 days. Heck, it might even change your life. I would try to do this with a friend or a family member so you can get someone to hold you accountable. You can also join Facebook groups. Personally, because I'm not trying to heal an autoimmune disease, I'm on a carnivore-ish type of diet 90% of the time. The other 10%, I eat whatever I want. I like cheesecake. Now, you might be wondering, why is it that some people tolerate the anti-nutrients in plants just fine while others don't? Well, that's where bio-individuality comes into play. Again, think of it like a spectrum. Not all plants are bad. I'm not saying you should never eat plants again. A lot of people have the genetic ability to eat avocado, broccoli, bananas, or mango and be just fine. Some people might not be able to tolerate those foods. If they eat a tomato or cheese, their eczema flares up, or it might trigger other autoimmune issues. So the only way to find out is by using the carnivore diet as your template and slowly reintroduce some of these foods back to your diet. Do you see what I mean here? Next up, the quality of the meat that you eat matters. There's a big difference between the nutritional profile of grass-fed and grass-finished beef versus grain-fed meat. So try to buy the highest quality meat you can afford. But as always, there are levels. If you want to try the carnivore diet but you can only afford grain-fed meat, that's totally fine. That's where I started. Trust me, it's still gonna be infinitely better than the standard American diet. Also, what you can do is buy a leaner cut of meat that's cheaper and then add grass-fed butter as your healthy fat. You can also buy in bulk. You can also go to a farmer's market and connect with local farmers in your area that raise grass-fed and grass-finished beef. You can even just do a quick Google search to find them. Also, did you know that meat raised from regenerative sources is actually carbon negative? This picture right here is actually pretty telling about the real cost of a vegan diet. So again, this does not have to break the bank for you. Think about it this way. Because you're always satiated, you can seamlessly pair the carnivore diet with intermittent fasting, which means you're gonna eat less frequently. You automatically save money. Some of it you can now use to buy higher quality meat. Less but better. I honestly think that it evens out doing it that way. But to me, I will cut costs on everything else in my life, except for the types of food I put in my body, because your health is absolutely worth it. I mentioned this in one of my other videos, but the number one cause of bankruptcy in the US and most countries without free healthcare is, you guessed it, healthcare costs. People get sick and they can't afford to pay their bills. What I'm trying to say is your health should be your number one priority. Always. You only get one body and you have to live in it. You might as well take care of it. And this might be my favorite quote to sum up the carnivore diet. Steaks aren't always cheap, but they're a whole lot cheaper than a lifetime of healthcare expenses and medications. It's up to you. The next question then becomes, how are you actually supposed to eat if you want to lose weight? Because here's the thing, 80% of your body composition is determined by your diet. You can't just freestyle this part. Do you have a proven plan that you can follow? To help you with that, I want to give you a free copy of my Lean Body Blueprint. This is how I was finally able to get rid of all my unwanted body fat without depriving myself of my favorite foods or spending countless hours at the gym. It's a simple 4-step process specifically designed for busy professionals, and it's the exact same blueprint that I teach to all my students, and they've all gone to see some amazing results. If you want to be the next success story, then download your free copy of the Lean Body Blueprint right now. There's going to be a link somewhere at the top here or in the description box. Just click on it, type in your email, and I'll send it to you right away. Hey, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and share it with your friends. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I post a new video every week, and feel free to leave a comment below if you have any questions about this video. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Virtual high five.